Hello everyone, and welcome to today's online course on Poison Central Notification and its implication on SDS. My name is Jess, and I am Regulatory Manager at the Global Product Compliance Group, connecting with you from the GPC headquarters in Sweden. First, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Shrirang Bhoot. He's the Chief Technology Officer, CTO at the GPC India. Mr. Shrirang has extensive experience in chemical regulatory compliance, in particular EU REACH regulation. He has also a vast knowledge of various software that involves in technical dossiers preparation, such as Euclid, QSAR Toolbox, EPI Suite, Tax Tree, etc. He is also involved in designing compliance solutions for worldwide regulations such as Korean REACH, Turkey REACH, UK REACH, and China REACH. This online course is organized by Global Product Compliance GPC in collaboration with the Basic Chemical, Cosmetic, and Dyes Export Promotion Council, popularly known as ChemExcel, set up by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry Government of India in the year of 1963. Today's program will start with an introductory speech by Mr. Biradi, Executive Director of ChemExcel, and followed by Shrirang's presentation. First, introduction of the PCN and its implication on SDS. His talk also includes steps for deciding mixture classification. And we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. For this, we have enabled the chat box feature. It is on the right-hand side of your screen in the auditorium. If you have any questions, just pop them in there. And our Executive Director, Shrirang, he will join for the QA session as well. And before we start, I would like to remind you that on August 18, we will have the same course, and you are welcome to forward this information to your colleagues. And the next event is also free of charge. And before I hand over the virtual podium to the presenters, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce who we are. So GPC, Global Product Compliance, is a company that specializes in global regulatory compliance solutions. We started by providing regulatory service in 2008. Since then, we have become one of the leading regulatory compliance service providers in the world. In May this year, Sustainability Support Service, SSS, a familiar name in chemical regulatory and compliance service, is acquired by GPC Holding in Sweden, and thus underwent a name change to GPC Europe AB. Since it is only a company name change with no change in legal entity, therefore, the business remains as usual, but now under the name of GPC Europe. And as you can see from the organizational chart here, GPC has two parts. That is GPC Regulatory and GPC Analytics. GPC Regulatory has several divisions, including GPC UK, Turkey, India, Europe, which is where I sit now in Sweden, Korea, and Russia. Under the GPC India, we have 3 branch offices, and on GPC Analytics, we have laboratories in Sweden and India. A little bit more about our portfolio. Since 2008, we have managed a portfolio of more than 9,000 substances, and we have a client base of more than 1,000 happy clients with a 99% retention rate. We have registered more than 1,200 substances, and we also have experience in lead registration and consortium management of more than 400 substances. We also have extensive experience in pre-registration and notification within chemical and cosmetic regulations. Recently, we developed a portal called the Supply Chain Communication Portal, and this portal has been used by more than 4,000 users, including suppliers, buyers, and ORs. And our regulatory service include Indian CMSR, EU REACH, Turkey REACH, K-REACH, Eurasian REACH, and UK REACH, and also Taiwan's TCC/SCA regulations. Our service also covers chemical regulation in the USA, Canada, Australia, Thailand, China, Japan, and Brazil, as well as cosmetic regulation in EU, India, and USA. And I would like to introduce our website. We have a latest feature called the Regulatory Compliance Intelligence Portal. If you register here with a free account, and you will be able to access the first global regulatory intelligence for different regulations. And the second, you will be able to access actionable summaries for different regulations. And the third, you will be able to generate service requests for your substances. And the last, manage all business detail like quotes, agreements in just one place. And please note that this feature is still in the beta version and many more updates will come soon. And we will send you a link after this course to access this regulatory compliance intelligence portal. And now I would like to hand over to our Executive Director, Shisha, Executive Director of GPC. He would like to say a few words and he will introduce Mr. Baradi. Hello, Shisha.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Jess.
Good afternoon.
It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. S.G. Baradi. Mr. S.G. Baradi is the Executive Director of Chemexil. He has been associated with Chemexil for several decades now. And we have a pleasure of knowing Mr. Baradi for more than 15 years since we have started with the European REACH regulation. And we have great cooperation with Chemexil, and we have had a very useful partnership with the Chemexil, and we are very proud to see what initiatives Mr. Baradi has taken to bring up the Indian chemical regulation, which is now much advanced stage today, as well as to help the member companies with the market access initiative, which is going to probably elaborate today. I welcome Mr. Baradi. We are very proud to have a partnership with Chemexil for this event and many other activities. Thank you. Can you connect to Mr. Baradi now, please? Yes.
Yes, let me try to. Hello, Ms. Baradi.
Can you connect?
Yes, let's try to connect with him.
Yeah. Now it's correct.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir.
Now we can hear you, please.
Yeah. First of all, I'm very much thankful to Mr. Shishur Kumra for organizing this online course, and I welcome all my participants. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I hope you are well and safe during this pandemic COVID outbreak and frequent lockdown being declared by the authority to control this pandemic to the maximum extent. It gives me immense pleasure to extend you very warm welcome to this important online training course on Poison Center notification and its implication on SGS and what are the next steps being organized by GPC Group, earlier their name is SSS Group Europe, and what are the and in the coordination with the Chemexil for the benefits of its member exporters. I'm glad to inform you that Indian industries responded very well to the challenges of EU registration process and have met the registration deadline. Similarly, I am sure member exporters also respond well to other countries' specific regulations.
Correct.
I am glad to inform you that Chemexil has already started various reimbursement of the registration charges to the member exporter, and because of Mr. Shishir Kumra and Mr. Shrirang, we have joined this initiative and my member exporters to pre-register their products and also for registration of products, which is started. First registration we have completed in 2008, then 2008, then 2010, then 2013, and now third registration we have completed in 2018. And I am really happy to inform you that we have got very good response from our Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Department of Commerce. They have considered our request to reimburse the registration charges to our member exporter, and because of that, the first registration, second registration, reimbursement charges we are already reimbursed to our member exporters. This only happened because of the maximum cooperation we have received from the Mr. Kumra and Mr. Shrirang. We have educated our member exporters to register their products. And now we have already registered, our members are already registered third registration. And I am happy to inform you that Mr. Kumra and our team is continuously requesting our Department of Commerce to reimburse data generation cost, consultation fees, and continuous effort. Ministry of Commerce has agreed to reimburse the data generation cost as well as overall fees, and now that limit has been extended from 50 lakhs to 2 crore rupees per exporter per annum. This is one of the support government has given to us. So I request my all members to take advantage of this scheme and register their product maximum. I also request members to take benefit of this online course, and whatever their queries they can ask my panelists. Mr. Shishir Kumra is there, Mr. Shrirang, Bhoot is there, who is going to address all your queries. Please take the advantage. And last, I will inform you that if you are registering your products, please submit your application within 90 days from the date of registration to the council. Then only government will consider your application and eligible to get the registration charges. I hope this with few words. If you want any queries, please contact the Chemexil office. I got one meeting, so I will leave this session. But my colleague, Mr. Prafulla Walke, who is also with the council and who is also associated with this Mr. Kumra from the beginning, he has got full knowledge of this registration. You can ask your queries to Mr. Prafulla also. So once again, I thank you all my participants and also panelists for attending this event and organizing this online course. Thank you very much. I hope you can take the benefit of this.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shishir.
Thanks.
And Mr.
Thanks a lot.
Shrirang.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
So you can continue, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Just
Okay.
to before Mr. Shrirang starts, I would like to just summarize what Dr. Baradi has said, is that the MAI is available up to 2 crores per annum per company for registration, and even they have agreed in principle for LOA reimbursement possibility in that case. But to avail this benefit, you have to apply for the reimbursement to the Chemexil, and we will give you the contact details of that. You can write to Mr. Prafulla, where within 90 days of your registration. So you'll have to submit an application for the reimbursement within 90 days, and then you can benefit out of it, and then you will get some percentage of that LOA and additional costs that you have made towards the registration. And this is applicable not only for EU, but for any other registration for chemical related products in any other country. So that means that in case you do it in Korea or Turkey, that will be also applicable. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Mr.
yes. I will also inform you that, Shishir, I want to inform all my participants,
Correct.
even though in this pandemic situation started from March,
Yeah.
we have reimbursed 7 crore rupees to my member exporters in these 2-3 months. And
Great,
we
great.
have already received another 7 crore rupees to the member exporters to reimburse that. We are waiting for their document, and I am sure that if we get a document for final reimbursement, within 4 days we are going to release their fund. So
Fantastic.
please take all this advantage and register their product and boost your export to all their countries. And you are eligible not only to the Europe, you are eligible to all other countries also, wherever
Yes.
you are doing the registration. So,
Absolutely.
thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Absolutely,
Shishir.
sir. Thank you. Thank you. This is a great initiative, and I am sure that a lot of companies would benefit out of it. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baradi, and thank you, Shisha. And now we will proceed to our first presentation. And now I will hand over to Shrirang. Hello, Shrirang. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jess. Thank you, Mr. Baradi, and thank you, Shishir sir, for this introduction. I hope now everybody can see my screen.
Yes, please go ahead.
Very good afternoon, all of you. My name is Shrirang Bhoot. I'm working as a Chief Technical Officer at GPC Group. And today I'm going to present on the Poison Center notification, that is commonly called as PCN, and its implication on safety data sheet. So what is covered within the today's presentation is basically I'm going to speak on what is Poison Center notification, that is PCN, the scope of PCN, what are the different obligations within Poison Center notification, what are different timelines for compliance, how to start preparing the notification, some highlights on harmonized information requirements beyond safety data sheet, and what are the implications on SDS based on this new development of Poison Center notification. So what is Poison Center notification? Poison Center notification comes under CLP, that is Classification, Labeling and Packaging Directive, or the regulation. And as per Article 45 of the regulation, all the companies who are placing the hazardous mixture on the market are obliged to provide the information about certain hazardous mixture to the relevant national bodies. So as the title suggests, this is directly applicable to all mixtures which are going to placed into the European market. And Annex 8 of the CLP regulation, which has been recently adopted in March 2017, it talks about the information requirements, harmonized information requirements for Poison Center notification. And these applications will be starting from 1st of January 2021. So Poison Center notification will be managed by European Chemical Agency, and this is a screenshot of the Poison Center notification website by ECA, wherein you can get an update from the Poison Center notification. You can also get an update from the GPC portal, wherein you just need to log in and get the information about the updates from the what is happening in PCN. So CLP regulation Annex 8 talks about the harmonization of the information requirement of certain hazardous mixtures in all EU member states. So what happened earlier is that poison centers have the information about the substances, but whatever mixtures which are going into the European market, there is no place where the harmonized information of the mixture related, mixture information can be found. So the CLP regulation has this specific requirement where the authority is trying to harmonize all the information related to the hazardous mixtures with the poison center, so that they will be able to respond in case of emergency health case comes to the doctor, health workers, or something, some accident goes, so they will be able to respond quickly. So this is an initiative where the European member states will have the information about the mixture in standard form. The information needs to be prepared into harmonized submission format, which is in XML format, or it can also be prepared in Euclid. So what are the mixtures that are scope in poison center notification? So the mixtures which are classified for human health and physical effects are only within the scope of poison center notification, and it does not cover the mixtures which are classified only for environmental effects or gases under pressure or explosives. The mixtures which are used in scientific research and development related projects are, and the mixtures which are not covered by the CLP regulation are also not within the scope of poison center notification. So what is exempted from poison center notification is basically the mixtures in medicinal products, veterinary products, cosmetic products, mixtures in medical devices, food and feeding stuffs. Those which are mentioned into Article 2 of the CLP regulations are exempted for poison center notification. Also, as I told previously, mixtures which are used for R&D purpose, they are exempted. Mixture classified only for environmental effects are also exempted, and the mixtures classified only for gases under pressure or explosives are exempted, and they need have certain different requirements for compliance. Who needs to comply? So obligations within Article 45 and Article 4 within CLP regulation stipulates that all companies who are placing the mixture into the market, primary duty holders are the importer and the downstream user, and there are also distributors who also needs to comply with the poison center notification, which has been recently clarified by the authorities. So downstream users will be the formulator, toll formulator, repackager, refiller, or the distributor who is relabeler, rebrander, or retailer. Everybody has to do the poison center notification wherever there is an implication on the hazardous mixture. Who can submit the information? For example, the information will be submitted only by the EU-based legal entities. The non-EU-based legal entities needs to appoint an EU-based legal entity to do the notification on their behalf. So primarily for the formulator, if there are different duty holders who are of the same group, then the mother company can do the poison center notification as a foreign user, or the importers or the downstream users of the mixture who are not within scope, they can do the voluntary submission as mentioned in the regulation. And the non-EU suppliers can also make submission, as I told you before. They just need to appoint a legal representative which is based in EU, and your only representative can also do this activity for the poison center notification. There are different timelines for compliance for poison center notification. So basically, the amendment of Annex 8 has came into force in 2017, but the actual compliance date is 1st January 2021. It is based on the consumer use and the professional use. So if your mixture is going into consumer use or professional use, then the 1st January 2021 is the deadline for doing the poison center notification. If your mixture is exclusively going for industrial use, then 1st January 2024 is the deadline, so you have some time for doing the notification for the mixtures which are directly going into industrial use. There is also a transition period for existing product which will end by 1st January 2025. So these are the deadlines for compliance, and there will be a transition period. So from 1st January 25, every mixture which is going into European market needs to comply with the poison center notification. And also, if there is a change between the notification, then obviously you need to update the poison center notification which has been done. So how to decide the compliance date? So compliance date can be decided based on the end use of the formulation or a mixture which is going into the European market. Say for example, formulator 1 is manufacturing a mixture and he is supplying into 3 different formulator. So formulator 2, 3 and 4, which are further using that mixture for say formulator 2 is using for industrial use, formulator 3 is using for professional use, and formulator 4 is using for consumer use. Then the consumer use and the professional use has a deadline of 2021. So by 1st January 2021, the mixture needs to comply. So either the notification will be done by the formulator 3 and 4, and or the notification can be done by the formulator 1 before the 1st January 2020 deadline. And the formulator 2, if he wants to do the notification, he can do the notification by 2024, but because he doesn't have any immediate obligation for that mixture, since it is going for the industrial use purpose only. But then it has to be exclusively for the industrial use purpose only. So what are the different harmonized requirements in a nutshell? So I'm just trying to present basically the submission format will be in Euclid, and it is say very similar to the member dossier which has been prepared earlier for your registration, but poison center notification also needs certain additional information about your mixtures. So either it can be done online or it can be done through Euclid. The submission format is Euclid compatible. It needs the submitter details, like whosoever is doing the submission, the name and the address of the submitter, and it has to be consistent with the label which is going into the market along with the product. Then product information like trade name, packaging details, use details, and the color, because use decides the deadline, and other details decide the classification. Then mixture related information like the classification and labeling of the mixture, toxicological information, compositional details, pH, physical state, etc. Here they have also introduced a unique formula identifier, which is very important number which needs to be placed onto the label or the packaging material or the SDS of the mixtures which are going into the European market. It is commonly known as UFI. So UFI makes a link between the product and the mixture information. So whatever product is going, if the mixture is going into different product, then obviously you can have different UFI or a combined UFI, and that UFI will make an link for the poison centers to understand what is there into the mixture, what is the classification, and based on which they can immediately, they can give a emergency response if something goes wrong. When I talk about mixture information, it is important that all trade names or the other names of the mixture or the product which are going to be appeared on the label, that needs to be mentioned. Also the toxicological information which is mentioned, which is part of your section 11 of the safety data sheet, it has to come into the poison center notification. Poison center notification has, very similar to the, it's a text box where you just need to give the toxicological information, and it has to be a reliable information. And both the information in poison center notification and the safety data sheet needs to synchronize. It cannot have different information. Then obviously hazard classification and labeling, like what is the hazard class, category, pictogram, signal words, hazard statements, precautionary statements that are used, and the physicochemical properties such as color, pH, and physical state. These are the primarily 3 important parameters within physicochemical properties which are required for mixture. Here one important thing is, if the SDS is going into different countries, then different country specific language information is also mandatory within poison center notification. But if English language information is also acceptable. Now moving towards, again, mixture composition is an important thing within poison center notification. Here the detailed complete 100% compositional details needs to be informed within the poison center notification. And you need to also understand or identify if you're exporting a mixture or you're exporting a mixture in mixture. So mixture in mixtures are also called as MIMs. So you need to understand what are different concentrations of the hazardous constituents within the mixture. If the substance or the constituent is classified, then concentration above 0.1% within the mixture also needs to be reported. If the component is not classified or it's non-hazardous component, then every component more than 1% needs to be mentioned, which is going into the mixture. Then there are certain product identifiers which also needs to be mentioned, like what is the subchemical name, CAS numbers, IUPAC name, INCI code, etc. What is the mixture in mixture trade name and wherever UFI applicable. So since this is the confidential information for the mixture manufacturer, so it is recommended that either you share this information with your buyer who is going to do the poison center notification. Otherwise you can appoint an only representative or the European legal entity who is going to do the poison center notification on your behalf. You can always have a confidentiality agreement with the poison center or the European legal entity who is acting on your behalf, and thereby you can control your confidential business information related to the mixture. But giving a mixture composition is a mandatory information, and your buyer might have started asking you this information. If they haven't started, they will very soon going to ask for this information, and for you have to be prepared like what all information you are going to share with your buyer. So either you do your notification, share your UFI with your buyer, or give the compositional details to your buyer. So it's up to you to decide like how you want to go ahead. But this is one of the mandatory information within the mixture. I've given an example where there are 3 different compositions which are going into the mixture. So the percentage of all the 3 components needs to be mentioned within the mixture. UFI, the unique formula identifier, it must be assigned with the mixture which is going to be placed into the market. So this is a new mandatory requirement which is going to come up. One mixture may have multiple UFIs also, depending upon the use or depending upon the product where it is going. So either you can notify one mixture as such, or you can do the notification for individual product where the mixture is going. I have shared an example wherein there is one mixture which is going to 3 different product group. You can see here, and you can assign 3 different UFIs for that particular same mixture based on different product. So either or, it can be you can go for one UFI or you can go multiple UFIs depending upon the requirement that you have. So if you have confidentiality for the product name also, you can decide upon how the number of UFIs you are going to generate for your mixtures. Now, while submitting the product information, as I told, use is very important, like where the mixture is going to be used, and whether it is going to be consumer use, whether it is going to be professional use or the industrial use. This use is going to decide the deadline for doing the poison center notification. So that is also mandatory. There is also a European product categorization system based on which you have to select the product category. Here I have just tried to share a case example. This is a product category number which has been taken from the European product categorization system. It has several different divergence where the P stands for the first level for product. Again, C stands for chemical products. So it's PC dash. CLN is for the cleaning, care and maintenance product. And then there is a further 4th level where the numbers are assigned based on the use, where the product is going to be landed. So this is a standard format, like you used to give the use details like PC, product category, process category in your member dossier. So this is additional to, very similar to that. For the mixture, you have to identify where your mixture is going to land into the European product categorization system. And then obviously individual packaging types also needs to be mentioned. Their range is not permitted. You have to tell all the packaging material that you are going to use into your mixture, whether it is going into small plastic bottles, whether it is going into big cartons. You have to give all the details while doing the poison center notification. Say if your mixture is going into 3 different product, it has 3 different packaging system, then you have to mention 3 different packaging system here into the packaging types. So this is not just a safety data sheet, it is beyond safety data sheet, where you have to adapt the existing as well as the new data which is available for the mixture. So you have to review the toxicological information which is available in section 11 of the safety data sheet in accordance with the Annex 2 of the REACH regulation. So normally everybody knows that the SDS is as per Annex 2 of the REACH regulation. So whatever information, if your components within the mixture are registered components, then that component related in toxicological information also needs to be included into section 11 of the SDS. If your mixture doesn't have actual toxicological data, then it is better to go with the component toxicological data based on which you have classified your mixture. This is again, as I told, this is a free text information, but it has to be in national languages. If your product is landing into 3 different member states like Spain, Italy, and Germany, then you might have to give this toxicological information into 3 different languages, because this information will be used by the poison center. So be assured that whatever information is going to be submitted is not going to be published anywhere. It will be only available with the poison center notification, poison centers who is going to use this information at the time of emergency responses. So multi-market submissions must include this information in every language. Check the quality of information in section 11. No reference to other sections of the safety data should be made, and it has to be directly from section 11, whatever toxicological information is available. Assign concentrations to all components. As I told in the beginning, it is very mandatory to give 100% compositional details of the mixture or mixtures in mixture. You have to identify what are the hazard components and also non-hazard components. Normally SDS doesn't contain non-hazardous components, but now for poison center notification it is mandatory to give 100% compositional details including the non-hazardous components. You have to also give exact concentration, and concentration ranges are not allowed. So you have to give exact concentration. What is the concentration that is going into your mixture? There are certain concentration ranges which are allowed for the hazardous mixture and non-hazardous mixture that I'm going to come up into my next slides. But it is mandatory to give 100% compositional details. That's the message that I want to give through this slide. And if the concentration changes and if it goes beyond the allowable limits, the notification needs to be updated. So keep in mind, poison center notification is not a one-time activity. It has to be kept active, and whenever there is a change that is going to happen with your mixture, it needs to be updated from time to time, so that the poison center will have all the updated information related to your mixture which is going into European market. So this is a format wherein you have to declare the components which has a major concern. Say for example, your components in the mixture has the classification which is mentioned in this box, like acute toxicity or specific target organ toxicity or skin corrosion or serious eye damage. If this type of classification is mentioned for the components in the mixture, then you need to see that what is the concentration range of that component into your mixture, and this is the maximum width of concentration which is allowed. So 5% width is allowed and 5% range is allowed for the component, hazard component of the mixture. Same, as long as the percentage of the hazardous hazardous substance goes down, the maximum width concentration also goes down. So you have to give the percentage of the hazardous component. which is going into your mixture. Now coming to the mixtures in mixture, so it is mandatory that you have to declare what are the components which are going into mixtures in mixture. When you know full details of mixture in mixture, it is recommended that you give all the details, but this is not very common as far as my understanding with the practical scenarios that I have dealt with industry. Mixture in mixture component is the most challenging things to deal with. In case when you are dealing with a mixture in mixture and you are depending upon one component of the mixture in mixture from your supplier, then you have to request him all the information. If he is not ready to give all the information, then you have to request, if he has done the notification, he can give the UFI for the notification which he has done, and that UFI you can use in your notification, so that authorities will know what all mixtures are going into your mixture in mixture, and there is supplier will be assured that there is no his confidential information will not be shared. But in case the supplier of mixture which is going into mixture in mixture, he has not done anything, then it is mandatory that whosoever is doing the poison center notification for MIMS, he needs to give the list of the list of mixtures which are going into mixture in mixture, along with the copy of SDS and the MIM supplier. So if nothing is available, then you have to give the copy of SDS and the supplier details from where the mixture in mixture is going to come into European market. And it is very easy that you can use the UFI or the compositional details of the mixture in mixture. So this is all about the information requirement of poison center notification. Now we will talk about implications on SDS. So this UFI, unique formula identifier, now needs to be notified along with the poison center notification, and it needs to be put onto the labeling or the packaging of the product which is going into European market. There is no rule on placing or redesigning the label to incorporate this new element, but it is up to the supplier to decide where they want to add the UFI. If there is the product and the packaging material is very small, then it is recommended that UFI should be mentioned in section 1.1 of SDS. Or the substance is going exclusively for industrial use or any other use, then UFI needs to be mentioned into the section 1.1 of the SDS. Very similar to the REACH registration number which was going into section 1.1. Now there will be an add-on number which is also called as UFI number, which is going to incorporated into SDS. Again, printing on UFI is not mandatory on the label, but it has to be on packaging material, and it has to coincide with the submission information. In case of mixture in mixture, if the composition details are not available, then it is mandatory to give SDS and supplier information along with the poison center notification. So whenever the SDS is going to poison center notification, then that SDS has to be in fully annexed to REACH format only. So you need to check like the SDS into the correct format. It is mandatory to have UFI on your SDS post 1st January 2021. So if your mixture is landing into consumer use, professional use, it is recommended to, they have the mandatory to put the UFI. This UFI should be done from the actual notification. So this UFI can be generated out of the system. So anybody can generate the UFI, but then that UFI has to be submitted with the notification. Then only it will be an active UFI. Then only the authorities will be able to recognize that UFI. Otherwise, it will be treated as dead UFI or inactive UFI. So don't try to generate UFI by yourself. If it is not going into the notification, then it will be treated as dead or inactive UFI, and then it's no use to use that dead or inactive UFI. Mixture classification needs to be done correctly. Now you need to revisit your mixture classification whether it has to be done correctly. Otherwise, you are going to land up into trouble in future. All the data present into SDS should be based on the classification done on the mixture, and it has to support, it need not to contradict to the classification of the mixture. So whatever data which is going into your SDS, it needs to meet the classification criteria as per the CLP regulation. There could be M factor, or there could be a specific concentration limits that will be used while classifying a mixture. What is this M factor and what is the specific concentration limit? I'm going to cover into my next slide. But that information also needs to be updated into your SDS, and it is mandatory to have that information into section 2 of your SDS, so that Poison Center knows whatever component is hazardous component present in your mixture, based on which the classification is done for the mixture. So these are the implication on SDS. This is the sample label with UFI that I just want to share with you. This is the label. Either you can put the label wherein there is a product details which contains, what are the substances which are contained into the product, what is the company details, company address, then pictograms, the labels, and then the warning letter, and then obviously hazard statement, precautionary statement, and some first aid measures, which is the standard label, along with the quantity, because quantity decides the packaging material for the label. So this is the sample label that I have tried to share, and this is the new UFI that is going to come onto your labels very soon. So be prepared, get ready yourself for this new abbreviation which is come up for the mixture called UFI, Unique Formula Identifier. So what are the actionable points that you need to do? First, you need to identify and verify what all mixtures you are manufacturing. Are you manufacturing mixtures, or are you manufacturing mixture in mixture? You need to prepare an inventory for the mixtures along with its ingredient components which are coming from your suppliers. Also, you need to compile the SDS for the ingredients which has come from your suppliers, based on which now you need to re-verify, revisit your classification, and verify and compile the classification for the mixture as per the CLP notification or the CLP criteria, along with the SDS which is available for the mixture mixtures, or the raw materials which are going, or the components which are going into your mixtures. Here what we can do is that we can help you out to do the pre-assessment of your mixtures to know whether you have a PCN obligation or not. We can also help you out to compile the data required for Poison Center notification, because yes, it's a tedious job wherein you need to collect the information. And we can also obviously help you out to do the notification on your behalf, because we have the European legal entity which can be used to do the notification on behalf of non-European manufacturer or the non-European suppliers of the mixtures. This is, I'm stressing again, it is better to go with your own Poison Center notification, because obviously your confidentiality will be maintained on the compositional details of the mixture. Else you need to disclose the confidentiality of your mixture or the components which are going into the mixture. With this, now I am just moving towards my next presentation, which is on the steps for deciding mixture classification. So this is very interesting and very challenging topic to decide what will be the classification of your mixture, because this classification is going to decide what are the obligations for you to do the, do you have any obligation to do the Poison Center notification or not. So these are the key elements of CLP, classification, labeling and packaging. The main obligations within CLP, types of classification, what are the steps to classify a mixture, different methods used in classification and labeling, then obviously label and package your mixture, and some take-home messages for you while doing the classification for mixtures. So CLP stands for Classification, Labeling and Packaging Regulation, which is based in EU-based regulation. It is an adaptation of UNGHS information classification requirement from the European perspective, and the key elements for CLP is to classify, label and package your product, communicate and harmonize. So classify means any manufacturer, importer or the downstream user need to classify their substances and mixture as per the criteria mentioned in CLP regulation. Then suppliers needs to label and package them according to the details or the criteria mentioned in CLP regulation. Obviously a communication obligation, all the manufacturer, importer, downstream users who has notified their substances or their classifications and labeling information to the authorities now need to communicate with each other. Also the suppliers who is doing the poison center notification also need to communicate with the poison centers, who are the authorities, the national bodies who is going to take care of the emergency services, emergency responses. And in a way, the CLP will help the authorities to do the harmonized system. So CLP will be a globally harmonized system, and there are certain substances which are already identified globally to be classified into similar manner. So this will follow the global harmonized system for classifying a substance. So obviously harmonization is one of the important key element while talking about the CLP regulation. So what are the obligations for mixtures or the formulators within CLP? You need to understand, you must classify, label and package your mixture according to the CLP criteria before putting it into the European market. So all the classification related obligation lies with the formulator. He needs to understand what he is going to formulate and he needs to classify based on the concentration of the components which is going into his mixture. If you are changing the composition of the mixture, then also you need to understand how that change is going to, how that change is going to affect the classification of the mixture. And if you are not changing the composition of the mixture, you are just buying the mixture from somebody and selling it to European market, you can use the same classification which has been done by the previous supplier, but it is mandatory that you should revisit the classification of the mixture which you are going to put into the European market. If you are importing a hazardous mixture, you must also classify the ingredients of the substances according to CLP and notify to the CLN inventory. So you need to see that all the ingredients which are hazardous ingredients has been already notified to the CLN inventory or not. And the main obligation with the formulator is he must keep all the information up to date with him, whether it's a scientific information or a technical information that is going to affect the classification of the mixture. So this is the main obligation within the CLP regulation, which is again talking about the covered within the poison center notification. So what are the different types of classification within CLP regulation? So there are primarily two types of classification. One is harmonized classification and one is the self classification. So harmonized classification is already agreed at EU level. So there is Annex 6, which is of the regulation, which talks about the substances, a list of substances which will have the harmonized classification. Also, it is mandatory that whenever the substance is harmonized, then that harmonized classification has to be mandatorily used by the substance or the mixture supplier. Also, it is important to note that harmonized classification is only applicable to substance. Mixtures are never harmonized classified. So mixtures will be treated as self-classified. And so it is very simple, like if the substance is not harmonized classified, then obviously it will be self-classified. So everybody who is manufacturing a substance or a mixture, they need to self-classify the their substance or a mixture based on the data available for that particular substance or a mixture. So substances which are self-classified, they have to be appropriate because their classification will be based on the data which will be available for that particular substance. Again, re-emphasizing, mixtures are self-classified only, and mixtures are not harmonized classified. Now we are going ahead with what are the different steps to classify a mixture. So it is very important to understand what are the different steps to classify a mixture. So these are the 5 standard steps which has been identified by the regulation. Is first to identify all available information for the mixture as well as the components in mixture. Then examine that information, cross check the source from where you got that information. It could be toxicological information, it could be physicochemical properties of that mixture or the components of mixture, or it could be ecotoxicological information. All information, first step is to collect the information, second step is to examine and cross check the information. Third step is to evaluate the information against the criteria. Once you know that this is the value for, this is the toxicity value, or this is the LD50 value for my mixture, then you need to compare that LD50 value with the criteria which is mentioned into the CLP regulation, based on which you can decide whether your substance or a mixture is going to be classified or not. So you evaluate the information against the classification criteria, and then you decide what will be the classification based on the classification criteria. Once you decide the classification, the labeling information needs to be taken out from the regulation, and then you need to, as a final step, review the classification. Again, if there is any new information which will be generated at a later course, so you have to keep revisiting the information for your substances or the components which are going into your mixture, and then you have to again follow these 5 steps to decide whether it is going to impact the classification of your mixture or not. So new information is generated all the time, keep up to date information, classify the label with appropriate label requirements, proceed hazard by hazard. So it is very important that you have to go slowly, just don't rush on deciding the classification for the mixture, and whatever information that you have collected, how relevant and how reliable that information is that you have collected, it is mandatory to decide, because you are going to classify your mixture based on the information. And then obviously consider whatever information you have. So it's a cycle you have to run. Whenever there is an update, you have to just go through the cycle and then check how you are going to classify your mixture. But these are the 5 basic steps to classify a mixture. Now we will move to different methods which are used in CL classification and labeling. So there are several methods which are mentioned. It is very complicated, but I'm going to present the primary methods which will be used for classifying a mixture. So classification for physical hazard, it's very straightforward. Physical hazard classification needs to be done only based on the data available for the mixture. So if you have the reliable test data available for your mixture, then go for the physical hazard classification. Otherwise, you can use the predicted models to do the calculations for physical hazard, but it is preferred that you do the physical hazard classification based on the data which is available for your mixture. But while doing the health or environmental hazard, there are different methods which can be used for deciding the classification and labeling information. So classification can be derived using the data on the mixture itself. It is very straightforward. Or there could be bridging principles which can be used, or the classification can be based on the calculation or the concentration threshold. So this is the third step which is very commonly used. The classification is based on the concentration thresholds of the components or the hazardous components which are present into the mixture. So while deciding the health and environmental hazard, classification derived using the data, actual data, it's very simple, straightforward. But if you have to go into bridging principles or the classification based on calculation and concentration threshold, I am going to present that in much details in my next slides, coming slides. So what are the different bridging principles which are used for classifying a mixture? Or even the bridging principle can be used for classifying mixtures in mixtures. but you need to understand there are 5 basic bridging principles which can be used for classifying a mixture. So primarily it is the dilution, which can be used for classifying a mixture. Here I have just tried to present a example for a dilution dilution principle, where there already mixture A which is available with the tested data, and it is further diluted with dilutant B, whose classification is also known. The mixture C need not to be tested, but can be classified based on the 2 classification, the mixture A and diluent B classification. The classification for the mixture C can be decided. So this diluent could be water. If the water diluent is used, in the direct hazard, whatever hazardous component in the mixture A can directly be used to classify the mixture. This is called dilution principle. There could be a batching principle. Batching means you decide the classification for one batch of a mixture, and you are manufacturing several batch of the same mixture without changing the composition of the mixture. Then you can use the same classification for different batch of that mixture. So officially, if you are changing the composition, then for every different composition, for every different batch, you have to classify the mixture. But if you are not changing the composition and you are manufacturing the mixture in different batch, then you can use the same classification within the batching principle. There could be a principle. The third principle is concentration of highly hazardous mixture. So if you know that the substance is highly hazardous mixture, or the mixture is formulated using the hazardous component, you can directly use the hazardous component classification for the mixture also, based on the concentration of the hazardous component. It's very simple. Then there is a interpolation within one hazard category. So this is another bridging principle. These bridging principles, to tell in this short session, it's to be frank, very difficult. I'm just trying to give you the overview of this principle, but this needs to be thoroughly checked while doing the classification. So you need to understand what principle that you are going to apply to classify your mixture or your mixture in mixture, so that you are not landing up into any wrong classification for your mixture, and you will not face any issue at a later date. So interpolation is basically mixture A and mixture B both have aquatic acute 1 classification, and the components which are used in mixture A and mixture B are different components with different concentration ranges, but yet the mixture has the classification of aquatic acute 1. If the same components are used to form a mixture C with another range of concentration, then the mixture C can be also assumed to have aquatic acute 1 classification, because if we apply the interpolation criteria, if you can see the value of the component which is going into mixture C is within range of the values of the components which are going into mixture A and mixture B. So as long as the component percentage is within range, you can interpolate the classification. So you can use the same classification for mixture C as well, based on the 2 components with different concentration ranges into the mixture. This is called as interpolation within one hazard category, but this is applicable to one hazard category only. If there are multiple hazard, then it is difficult to use interpolation, because you may end up into something very wrong classification for your mixture. So interpolation is recommended for single hazard category, when you know that your only one component is classified with only single type of classification, then interpolation principle can be used. The last bridging principle, which comes under substantially similar mixtures. So if you know that your mixture is very similar to mixture B, say for your manufacturing mixture A, which is very similar to mixture B, they have same components, mostly into same ranges, then you can use the similar mixture concept. It is very similar to read across approach while doing the substances, so that you check if the two substances have structural similarity, functional similarity, you conclude that they will behave similarly. Same similarity principle also applies within mixture, wherein you can claim that if mixture A is similar to mixture B, they might have same classification based on the bridging principle on substantially similar mixtures. So these are the 5 bridging principles which are very important while doing the classification for mixtures. Now I am going into the last category for classification based on calculations or the concentration thresholds. So classification based on calculation is only applicable to the acute values. So whenever you have acute values for different components in your mixture, then using this formula, you can estimate what is the acute toxicity value for your mixture. So C is the concentration of the ingredient and 80 is the acute toxicity estimate. Say for example, you have 1, 2, 3 ingredients with 200, 300 and 400 as the LD50 value. You need to identify what is the LD50 value. You need to calculate what is the LD50 value for your mixture based on the different percentage of the constituent, and whatever value you will get on this based on this calculation, based on that value you can classify your mixture. But this is only applicable to acute toxicity. It is not applicable to any other toxicity. You can also use a similar type of calculation for the aquatic hazard calculation, where you want to calculate the NOAC values or LC values, but it is recommended to use only where you have quantitative results. For qualitative results, again the calculation cannot be used, like irritation, skin sensitization, genetic effect, carcinogenicity effect. This method cannot be used. In that case, the calculation classification based on the concentration thresholds is recommended. So there are 2 different thresholds which are mentioned within the regulation. One is called generic cutoff value and other is called generic concentration limit. So based on the classification, there are different cutoff values and concentration limits for the components which are going into mixture are mentioned within the regulation. So you need to say, you need to see based on the classification of your component. Say for example, your component is carcinogen and it is going more than 1% in any of the mixture, then you have to classify the mixture as carcinogenic mixture. You cannot ignore that more than 1% carcinogen component within your mixture, because that is the generic concentration limit which has been set up by the authority, mentioned into the regulation. So that generic cutoff values and generic concentration limits are very important to understand to use while deciding the classification of the mixture. There is also additivity and non-additivity hazards principle. So additivity within regulation, the acute toxicity has been classified. Say if your substance has acute toxicity, or your substance is skin irritant, or your substance has eye damage classification, then additivity principle can be used. You can just simply say that your mixture is classified because your component is classified. So additivity principle can be used while deciding the classification of the mixture, but obviously this might over classify your mixture. So these are the principles or the methods which can be used for doing the classification of your mixtures. But now I'm going to, we are going towards important points. When you classify your mixture, you need to see if your ingredient is harmonized classified, then you cannot ignore that. You have to use your ingredient as it is with the harmonized classification. All the suppliers are responsible to evaluate their relevant hazard classes. So you as a supplier of mixture is also responsible for deciding the classification of your mixture, and obviously it has to be a self classification because mixtures doesn't have harmonized classification. And then you also need to see what are the additional relevant hazard classes and differentiations that are not covered by the harmonized classification. So you have 2 components, one is harmonized, one is not harmonized. Both are classified. then you need to see what all classification that you need to pick for your mixture based on these two components: harmonized classification, classified component, and self-classified component. Thus, the full classification received from the substance supplier, including both the harmonized classification and the possible self-classification, must be applied when deriving the classification of the mixture. This is very important step by classifying. This is very common question. Why does same chemical sometimes have different classification? So supplier A is having a different classification like corrosive, harmful if swallowed. Same chemical is coming from supplier B. He is classified as substance as irritant, toxic if swallowed. Why these kind of gaps happen? So sometimes this is understanding gap, or sometimes it can be based on the different hazardous impurities or additives or ingredients which has been used by the supplier. There are, based on the different properties such as physical form, pH, and the flash point also change the classification of the chemical. So you might have different supplier with the different classification. Different conclusion from the scientific studies. So if supplier A has registered a chemical and supplier B has not registered a chemical, so your supplier A might have stringent classification B because he has already registered with EU. He has all the data available for your for that particular chemical. So he has better classification compared to supplier B who has not registered the substance, and he might have landed up into something else classification because of the different conclusion from the scientific study. And for mixtures, different classification of the ingredient substance used for the mixture classification. So for mixture, everybody can have different understanding. So there could be a possibility of different classification that might happen for the same substance or same mixture. So contact your suppliers and encourage them to adapt the common classification. That is the most recommended thing. Again, the question comes to you, which classification you should use. So if there is any harmonized classification, then obviously you must use it. There is no other choice for that harmonized classification. And you just, but if you adopt that most stringent, you can adopt most stringent classification as a precautionary approach. That might overclassify your mixture or a substance, but that's the most recommended. But if you are adopting a classification, then you should be confident with a justification available for whatever classification that you have concluded for your substance. So classify your chemical yourself, and it needs an expertise. So either develop an expertise within yourself or give the job to a competent person who can help you out to do the classification for your substance or the mixture. And again, contact your suppliers and encourage them to adopt the common classification is the most recommended thing from our side. Once you decide on the classification, now you need to label and package your mixture. So I have already shown a standard label. Now your mixture will have add-on UFI also added into your mixture, label mixture. So your mixture should classified hazardous. You must ensure that labeling information contains all the information related to the classification. You as a supplier are responsible for the information on the label. The information on the label must be consistent with the information on SDS. Sometimes it happens that you label something and you have something in SDS. So make sure that whatever you have put onto the label, it has to be synchronized with the SDS information, or whatever you have on SDS, it has to be synchronized with your label information. And if the classification is changing with an updated information, you have to also update your label. So it's not a one-time activity. It has to be done time to time. You have to revisit the details about your components in mixture and classify your mixture accordingly. The packaging of the hazardous chemical should keep workers and environment safe from unintended contact. It is very important, because whatever we are doing, everything is for the health hazard of the workers who are working in the industry, as well as we have to keep our environment safe from the unintended contact. So some take-home messages based on this presentation is to prepare the list of components or the mixtures that you are manufacturing and storing at your component. Prepare an inventory of the classification for the components that you are using into your mixture along with the copy of SDS. Revisit the SDS, recheck the classification if you have done the classification correctly. Communicate within supply chain for the information exchange, because it is very mandatory that you have the correct information available with you from your supplier. You also need to check if you are taking same substance and two suppliers are classifying the components differently, then what is the reason? Can they come up with a common classification? So communication within supply chain is an important step. Identify the competent person or a consultant to do the activity. Yes, I understand for all industry it's not possible to do the activities by themselves, but then it is recommended to hire a competent person or hire a competent consultant who can guide you to do the correct classification of your substances. Identify the method for classifying the mixture. Keep a record of information and document in your SDS, and keep up-to-date information related to your mixtures. So for mixtures, again, I'm repeating a number of times, it is mandatory that you have to keep up-to-date information, and based on the classification, you have to come up with the poison center notification. Poison center notification can be done for all the mixtures. It is within the CLP regulation, it is mentioned that it has to be done for the mixtures which has hazardous human health hazard classification, but it can also be done for other mixtures as a voluntary step. So you can precautionally do the poison center notification so that you have a UFI whenever you are exporting your mixture, and there is no communication gap between you and your buyer. You can always, by doing the poison center notification, by getting the UFI, you can always protect your confidentiality related to the compositional details of the mixture. So I once again recommend you to revisit the classification, revisit the requirement. If it is not at all required, still you can do the notification as a proactive, safe approach, just to avoid sharing the business confidential information to your buyers. So with this, I thank you all for your patiently listening to my presentation.